Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Emet. And joining us, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Salman Schechter, Day School, Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kamenovsky, Anshe Chesed in New York City. Today, 790 days. There are two bodies of hostages still held, Sudthisak Rinthalak and Gvili. We're recording this on the evening of 790, and according to the news that we just saw, one of those bodies has been returned, but we don't know who it is. It may not even be either of them. So we are constantly thinking about them, and awaiting a time when this phase can transition. We also want to send a big shout out to our colleague, friend, Rabbi Eliezer Diamond, and just offering our prayers for him. We know that this is a difficult time. We are thinking about you, and studying Torah gives us joy and reminds us of the great joy that you have given all of us, and great teachings and wisdom, and just the joy of Torah. And we I think, try to live up to that every week when we study together. This week we're studying Parashat Vayishlah, which is an amazing parsha. It's an amazing parsha for lots of reasons, which we've discussed in previous years. This extraordinary moment, Jacob crossing over to the land of Israel, his impassioned plea to God, Katonti mikola chasedi mikola amet, which has been made into quite a beautiful song. I am katonti. Katonti, is part of the Hebrew language. I'm not worthy. I'm not great, and I'm small. I am too small for all the things that you have done for me. It's a real expression of humility, and Jacob is expressing this humility. He left with nothing, just potential. Came back with a whole family, 4 wives, 11 sons, 1 daughter. It's quite substantial. Lots of flocks. He's a wealthy man. But he has one thing to encounter, which is his brother who has planned to kill him. We, of
That
course,
throws a monkey wrench into things.
it does. We remember fondly the evening before he meets his brother. Jeremy, we just want to give us 30 seconds of that. What happens
Jacob
then?
Jacob he's set the covenantal train in motion, but it came at the expense of Esav, shunting Esav to the side, purloining both his financial firstborn status, the status as the leader of the nation, as the blessing. And Jacob's coming back, and he's very worried. And the great line, "Ve'yira Yaakov mod ve'yitzer lo." Jacob is very frightened and terribly troubled, and the rabbis have the great line, he's frightened lest he get killed. He is troubled at the thought that in the ensuing battle he may have to kill other people. And tries to propitiate Esau with lots of great gifts. And the messengers come back and say, "Oh, Esau's coming with 400 men," and he's terribly, terribly frightened. And he's left alone. He divides his camp into two halves, so that he figures, listen, Esau is going to kill a bunch of us, but maybe he won't kill all of us if I divide it into
But he's
two.
not left alone.
But
He places himself alone on the other side of the river.
on the way back, because he's tremendously brave. So there's actually a great Rashbam on this, which I'll say in a second, is that he's left all alone on the other side of the Yabok River, and he wrestles with this mysterious creature all night long. In the end, when neither the creature nor Jacob can totally win, there's a scene in which the says, I'll let you go. You got to let me go now. He says, I'll let you go, but you've got to bless me. And the angel, who is partly seems like he's Esav's guardian angel, partly seems like Jacob is wrestling with himself, and then he gets the new name of Yisrael. The great Rashbam, this is Rashi's grandson, Shmuel ben Meir, is I guess an 11th or 12th century French commentator. What's with the angel? Is the angel wrestling? The angel is, because Jacob's planning on running away, And the angel says, "You're not going anywhere, buddy. You have to confront this." And he's confronting both his own self, his own guilt, his future, his family's future, Esav's just claims. And though Jews have a tradition of reading that Esav is really not nice at all, but the simple pshat of the Torah, the pashut pshat of the Torah, is that they, in fact, despite counter to everybody's expectations, they embrace, they kiss, they love each other. And Jacob says the great passage, to see your face is like seeing the face of God. After everything that we've been, everything that has divided us, everything that has set us on a conflictual path, I see your face, and it's like seeing the divine face, and it's a moment of reconciliation or love.
So that would suggest that he was wrestling Esau's angel, who would have the same face perhaps as Esau.
That could be that. I mean, I'm open to that.
Well,
I mean,
I want to just
yeah,
highlight the fact that this moment is filled with emotion, and
motion.
emotion includes hugging, kissing, crying, and elation, and prayerfulness, the whole palette of emotions.
Right. But it seems that it also suggests that Jacob has completely misjudged Esau from the beginning. And the denouement, when he meets his brother, is not anything that he had prepared himself for, because he couldn't believe it could ever be like that. And I think it is an attempt to fill in some of the gaps in the later story, because we're asked to consider how Jacob judges people and whether he is a good judge.
All right, let's move through the parsha, because I want to get to the end of the parsha. But a couple of things are important to highlight here. After the reconciliation between the two brothers, we have this moment where Yaakov arrives in Shechem. The verse is chapter 33, verse 18. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem ir Shechem, Asher be'eretz Canaan. Jacob arrives in Shechem. Now, there's lots of ways to translate this. I choose to translate it. He arrives in wholeness at the city of Shechem. One could also translate it as he
explain out the
arrives.
two possibilities.
The two possibilities, well, two that I'll show. One is he arrives in wholeness to Shechem, or he arrives at a place named Shalem, which is near Shechem, which is the city of Shechem. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to there are a lot of ways to translate this. It seems to me compelling enough to say that he arrives at this place in a moment of contentedness in his life, and that is where he camps. And then chapter 34, the rape of Dinah, terrible, terrible moment in the life of the family. Jacob does not comport himself in ways that I think that are laudable. We've discussed it in the past, so we're going to just set it aside, even though it's a brutal, brutal story and worth attention. But then we have this moment where God tells him to go to Beth El. He makes his altar there. He gets his name Yisrael in another tradition, a story of the naming of Yisrael. And then he loses his wife Rachel. Rachel dies in childbirth. He puts a pillar on her grave, buries her in a grave, not in the family grave in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, but a burial spot somewhere that still exists to this day, near Bethlehem. And then we have a cryptic verse which tells us that Reuven sleeps with Bilhah, the concubine of his father. Vayishma Yisrael. Israel hears this. Jacob hears this. Nothing more is said about this. Then we get a genealogy, 12 sons of Jacob. And then we have this verse. which is chapter 35, verse 27, which is the verse that is stumping me, and I want more. Vayavo Yaakov el Yitzchak Aviv. Jacob went to his father Isaac. Mamre, Kiryat Arba, Hichavron. 3 names to this place: Mamre, Kiryat Arba, or Hebron, Asher Gar Sham Avram v'Yitzchak, the place where Abraham and Isaac lived. And then the Torah tells us that Vayu Yemei Yitzchak me'at shana u'shmonim shana. Isaac was 180 years old. Vayigva Yitzchak, he dies. Vayamat, Vayasaf elamav, characteristic telling of how a patriarch dies, gathered to his kin. Zaken usva yamim, old and ripened of years. Vayikberu oto Esav v'Yaakov banav. Both Esav and Jacob bury him in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. And there's a lot to comment on in all of that, including the last little, line, which is that the 2 brothers bury their father, which is extraordinary. It reminds us of the 2 brothers burying their father Abraham. Yitzchak and Ishmael bury their father Abraham. But I want to return to this verse 27. Jacob comes to his father Yitzchak, and nothing else is said there. And this is a point where I want more from the Torah. I want to know what went on in this moment, and I want to kind of try and figure out why it took so long for Jacob to come to his father Isaac. Jacob's been in the land for some time already. He's lived in different places in the land on his return from the land. What does it say that he now comes to his father Isaac? And what does it say that the Torah doesn't have anything to say about this? And bonus question is, this is when there's still a lot of things that are going on in Jacob's life. Jacob lost his wife. Jacob has an insurrection in his family. And then he goes to his father? So I wanted to pitch that as a puzzle for us to kind of or try and solve, or at least share in the questions. I don't know if you react to that in the same way. Go ahead.
I'm not sure that I can. First of all, you really excel at filling in the emotional details. Let's just note to all of our friends and devoted listeners that this is how Midrash works, right?
Yes.
If the text is smooth, if there's nothing that prompts you with a question, if there's no unanswered gap, there's nothing to say. What Midrash is like the sand in the oyster that produces the pearl. There's some piece of sand. There's some silence that you need filled up. There's some question that you need answered. And as we discussed before we started recording, and you guys out there in the listening world, you wouldn't know this at first glance, but if you start trying to line up the dates in which things happen, as Rashi does on the very verse that we're talking about now, and because they give us birth dates for people and they give us death dates of people, then the narrative of the Torah is a little bit disrupted, because what happened to Abraham? Abraham sends for the wife of Isaac, sends the servant for the wife of Isaac, and then she comes, and then we don't hear any more about Abraham. But if you work out the chronologies, he's alive long until the stories of Jacob and Esau. But the Torah doesn't tell us them. If you work out the chronologies of the ages of Jacob and Esau and Isaac, then you realize that Isaac is alive for a long time upon the return of Jacob with all of his children to the promised land. And yet, this is what makes the silence so strong in this passage. Jacob the Torah at least has not related to us that do you want to meet your grandchildren? Do you want?
Yeah, no, that's that. I mean, what I'm being bothered by is that there's no. Give me one word, and the reason why I want one word is because we have different examples of reunions in the Torah. Like we will have a couple of weeks from now when Jacob and Joseph reunite, lots of crying and lots of emotion there. We had a brotherly reunion at the beginning of this parsha, where 2 brothers cry on each other's throats practically, and here we have a son a son whose life, a bereaved son, a widower, and one of his wives is gone, seeing his father after all these years. Not a single word. I don't know. I mean, Barry, go ahead. Weigh in on this.
So what strikes me is that what's of utmost importance is the place. You know, people are buried where they die in the Bible. We don't, put them in a box with dry ice and ship them off somewhere. So what's significant is that Jacob comes to Hebron, I think, because he realizes his father is going to die. And it's a way of paying him his last respects. The other thing that struck me listening to you is that we can make some similar claims about Esau. Esau also leaves his father, and he also has grandchildren for Isaac that Isaac never seems to meet or interact with. And so it's striking that at the end, they both come to Hebron so that they can properly bury their father.
Okay, so then I'm going to pose this question for you, which is, for all these years we've been talking about these parshas, and I would say the following. Breshit, Genesis is working out siblings, is working out a story between siblings. And you can go through every set of siblings from Cain and Abel all the way down to Joseph and his brothers. We don't have to do that right now. You know what I'm talking about. Lots and lots of sibling problems in every single story. It seems to me, reading this, that there's another theme going on here, and that is specifically fathers and sons. Fathers and sons in the sense that we have a breakdown. Let's go from Terach to Avram. It's a literal breakdown. Avram leaves his father's household, never sees him again, practically. And the Torah doesn't even deal with that. Abraham literally sacrifices Isaac. He's about to kill Isaac. They really never see each other again after the sacrifice of Isaac. There is a cryptic note in the end of Chayei Sarah where it says that Abraham gave Isaac all of his possessions. All right, but there's nothing there. So then we have Jacob and Isaac. Jacob leaves. Isaac doesn't send for him. And then we have coming up Joseph and Jacob. And it seems to me that there's an issue with fathers and sons here.
It's particularly odd because, one of the ways in which this works, as I said a minute ago, Midrash is effective because there's some problem that needs solving, some silence that needs filling, some question that needs answered. But one thing one might say about the way this works is that the Genesis is very good at, kind of creating chapters. These are the Abraham chapters. And when it's over, it's over. And these are the Isaac chapters. And when that's over, it's over. And these are the Jacob chapters. And there's not a lot of cross-pollination. And it's frustrating to you in particular, Elliot, because you're looking for more emotional depth. But I think in a narrative context, one of the things that the Torah has done is march the story forward with no.
Well, I think that's the commentators really make that point. They say, first of all, Ein Mukdam Muchar B'Torah. That's Rashi quoting Talmud that says there's no real stated order in the Torah. Just a second, and but what we do have is the Torah's narrative is organized in such a way that we're going to go complete the narrative here, and then we're going to go to Vayeshev Yaakov, Be'eretz Migurei Aviv. We're going to go to the whole story of Joseph next door, even though there's overlap. In chronology, one of the things that we do, and you made reference to the Rashi comment there, which is, we tell stories differently. We tell stories in chronologies, not necessarily on plot, right? And what the Torah does is it kind of, what the Torah is going to do in Vayishlah is actually going to tell us the completion of the Isaac life. And it's not going to give us the chronology. And in fact, we can make the case that Isaac lives 12 years after Joseph is sold to slavery. Right, that's an astounding piece of data.
I think it's important to keep in mind that we're looking at the patriarchs not unlike we look at monarchs. and a monarch comes into his or her own with the death of the previous monarch. That's when there's a transition, right? A king generally doesn't serve in the
Charles III
lifetime of
doesn't take the job
in
until
the lifetime of the previous king.
yeah.
And so the problem that we have with the patriarchs is, on one hand, we want to dispatch the elder because the story is now moved to the new generation. And so we end up with things like we have, with cryptic notes that suggest that the patriarchs are around a lot longer, but functionally they're not. Once Isaac becomes
Yeah.
the center of
You have
attention,
like Pope
it's
Benedict who
Isaac.
resigns, and it's
But
Once
functionally, this is exactly the way I think the way Barry just said that is encapsulates that the Torah is intent on driving the narrative forward, and it's not that worried about the chronology. But you are left with a couple of slightly unappealing choices here as an interpreter. One is that one of your choices to make is, yeah, I know that they said that he was such and such years old, and if you work that out, there's a whole bunch of stuff that makes no sense. Um, and so your unappealing choices are, yeah, there are these facts we can extract, like Isaac was alive for 12 years after Joseph is sold, and that's kind of like it doesn't seem to go with the story. Or you're left to say, which is another thing which is not entirely appealing, is that they told us the dates, but they're not really paying any
so
attention to
here's
the
why I
dates.
react as strongly as I react to, because obviously I'm reading this, with a modern mindset. I'm thinking like, okay, if you have to write the biography of Isaac, or you have to write the biography of Jacob, or you have to write, if you're a biographer, okay, and I'm not, but here's what I would think would be the first, exercise that a biographer would do, which is get you read some biographies, and you see at the front of the biography you have all the dates, right, and it goes through the guy's life by dates: born certain date, died certain date, and then graduated from da 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 da, married at certain date, and it lists everything in by chronology. Okay, and that, I mean, it strikes me that if you were a biographer, that's what you would do. You would be laying out everything
but
on your table, and then you'd extrapolate from that, and you say, look, geez, when he was 80 years old, all of this was happening. You know,
I think
If you
there's
were
a misunderstanding here, though.
okay,
And the misunderstanding is the biography is not the biography of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's the biography of the people. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are fleshed out, as it were, in service to the drama of the people. And because let's face it, as biography, the Torah is missing the big picture. There are a handful of stories of people who lived between 147 and 180 years, and not necessarily all the key parts are in there.
presumably some other stuff happened too.
no, I'm not
You might,
bothered
you know
by
what
the,
I would like to offer. This is not the best example, but it's like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
I love a
Somebody
Shalom,
wrote
Tom
And
Stoppard.
so is Tom Stopper.
so is Tom Stoppard. Um, Somebody took an incidental, minor, item and knit something big around it. So you kind of want to say, let's just, for example, riff with the one that says that Isaac was around for 12 years after Joseph is sold. You kind of want to imagine that as he's watching his son give the coat of many colors and favoring one son and alienating all the other ones, you kind of want dad to say to little uncle, you want to rethink this? Can I give you a little advice here on how it works when you invidiously create hierarchy? You want, and so maybe if you were Tom Stoppard, the play that you write is is Isaac's reaction to Jacob's family, which the Torah has left silent, which is bothering you.
Yes, it
Maybe
is.
you want to write, the other one that when you deduce these dates, as we were talking about before we started recording, Isaac is all of 123, the sprightly, youthful 123, when he calls his son together and say, "Listen, I'm blind, I'm about to die." and he
120.
only has another 57 years of life left in him.
Yeah.
So you want to you kind of want the additional stories, and that's in some cases when Jews have written midrash. And I think that there'd be a lot
Oh,
of folks.
Elliot, it occurs to me that you were born in the wrong time.
I
You
was
really
born.
want to be a rabbi in the Talmud.
That actually
Because,
is true.
one of the great extrapolations is that Shem and Aver are around into the life of Yaakov, which is why he could study at their yeshiva.
So I give the rabbis, katonti, we give them a lot of credit for their imaginative leap here in creating a whole world that projects the rabbinic culture back into the biblical era. Fine. And maybe what I'm trying to do is project, an emotional life back into this family, given the data that I have here, the data
Okay,
that
yeah.
I, is
Okay,
that
so
they're
so
alive. He's alive when
so
his
we,
son.
so
Go.
we know so we have established what the unanswered question is. We have established what the silence gap is, but we haven't really filled it in. I mean, we can say here that perhaps Jacob, who is really proud, he does say, "Katonti mikol hachasdin mikol haemet," I'm unworthy of all this blessing, but he also says, I crossed the Jordan with nothing but a staff in my hand, and I've come back, and I'm 2 camps worth of animals and wives and children, and he's really kind of proud of himself. Let me be a little bit nasty to the occupant of the White House. I mean, one sort of feels like, from what one knows about the psyche of Donald Trump, is like, you know, the father was just never approving and never affirming. And does Jacob come back and say, "Look at what I did, and I'm so mad at you for what I had to go through to get it, and I'm not going to show you your
So
grandchildren"?
here's where I would go with that, which is, here's a guy who lost a wife, his beloved wife. Here's a guy who has his family is crumbling in front of him, and he says, "I need to be with my dad. I want my dad, and I need someone who I'm related to." Evidently, his mother's gone. Rebecca is off the screen. Okay,
And
and
and she was his
and
favorite
she was
grandmother.
something to him. Okay, so he has nobody. So he's going to turn to his father, and turning to his father, we get silence. And that doesn't set well with me, because I just want a hug. I want a tear. I want hi. Shalom. I want Yitzchak to say, "Oh, how have you been?" Nothing. And so it's frustrating to me, because this relationship is I guess just another broken relationship in all of the biblical relationships between fathers and sons and brothers and brothers. And look, it doesn't get reconciled until the very end. When Jacob and Joseph meet, there's plenty of emotion for all of us to go on. And there's lots of hugging and crying, except for the fact that Jacob really doesn't cry on Joseph's neck. Joseph cries on Jacob. It's all one way, but there at least is something. Look, I don't think we're ever going to get any of that in the Torah. Can we, pull out something from David and Solomon? And no, not really. There's nothing.
One of the ways in which this is counterintuitive. I mean, the wanting my dad thing is, it's totally lovely, and homespun, and there's this great song by the country singer Lori McKenna. It's, "Even when you're all grown up, even when you're my age, you're still going to be my baby. Um, don't forget when you're all grown up, but you don't feel that way." So your reading of this gave us Jacob, who's all grown up, but he doesn't feel that way, and
That's
he's the
Robert
boss
Munch
man.
also. My
He's the
baby will be.
paterfamilias, but he doesn't feel that way, and so that's great. But one of the things that's counterintuitive about this for me is that the way Genesis does tell these stories of breaks between parents and children, or fathers and sons, is that this is a tradition of like great reverence for ancestors and great reverence for parents, and yet the Genesis stories um, make it pretty complicated. It's like you you in this religion, we want we want to be the participant in Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Mevi Goel Livnehem, Livnei Bneihem. We want to feel ourselves parents and children. Kol Dorot Zera Yisrael Abdecha. You want to be part of this chain of the family, generation to generation. And a story like this, or this detail that we've been focusing on today, this silence, this relatively emotionless, it's a connection, but it's not really a beautiful one, unless we make it in the way that you made it. It's a little counterintuitive. Like, why isn't it the case, and why doesn't Abraham, why doesn't Isaac, spend more time, and why doesn't it tell us, which as the dates work out, that Abraham is still alive well into the life of Jacob and Esau? The Psalm 128, we sing it in various contexts. Ure vanim livanecha shalom Yisrael. The great blessing is to see children to your children. And that's like a deep Jewish feeling that Genesis, it's a softball. All they have to do is smack it, but they're not really smacking that particular emotion.
So okay, so the Torah really is not concerned with that, and I would add, maybe we should not say to people, maybe you should emulate these people. They're not being presented to us as emulatable. They're being presented to us as covenant. Okay, I get it. Okay, but I still, I don't want to use the cliche, but we're all struggling. This is Jacob wrestling. Yeah, I think we give ourselves too much credit for being wrestlers, but so maybe this is the wrestling moment. I want to wrest out of this text something more, and it's leaving me to. It says to me, go to your table, go to your writing tablet, and write the script for this. That's what it says to me.
Parenthood. You're the only one of the three of us who's got grandchildren. Inshallah, one day we'll lirot banim levanecha.
Yeah.
It's so packed with the thought of it for me. The thought of, the reality of being a parent and the thought of being a grandparent. It's so emotionally.
Well, I'm coming from there.
Awesome.
They live in Israel. I miss them. Just made a trip to, I booked a ticket to go see them. I miss, the delicious little 2 and 1 year old. Okay, and part of, I guess that's, I get emotional about this because we all live in these relationships. We all have our parents and we all have our children, and we have these relationships. Some of us are missing, these members of our in our lives, and we have our whole lives to kind of figure out these relationships. And here it's like I want the tennis ball got lobbed over the net for me, and it says Jacob came to Isaac, and I want to know, that's it. Tell me more. Okay, but we're going to have to leave it there and let our viewers and listeners be the ones to react to this. If you have a good script for us, do us a favor, send it to me. I'm interested.
Well, so just one last sprinkle, and then we'll bring it to an end. Is that for all the incredible strife between Isaac and Ishmael, Ishmael was sent into the desert to die. They came back and buried Abraham together.
Yeah.
And for all the tremendous strife between Yaakov and Esau, who were set as enemies from the get-go, from the womb, they come together to bury Yitzchak. And to me, in a real world, not only a textual world, where the people of Israel have had such strife with our neighbors, and such titanic battles throughout history. And what Esau represents, Ishmael represents the Islamic world in Jewish tradition, and Esau Edom represents the Christendom in Jewish tradition. And in those 2 episodes, the Ishmael and Isaac burial of Abraham, the Esau and Jacob burial of Yitzchak, you have like something that is human. Kibud Av, honoring one's parents, is just human. And though we may have these terrible fights with these other nations, there are things we can and not only can but must do together as being humans.
Yeah.
And I just think that's
That's a
kind of
good
awesome.
that's a good note to go on. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. Let's thank our viewers and listeners for watching and listening to us. Rabbi Kalmanovsky going off to Israel,
Eretz HaKodesh,
leaving on Sunday.
I'm going on Sunday, yes, and
Have a
the next
wonderful
time we
one.
speak, I will probably be chiming in
That's
from.
amazing. We look forward to that. And everyone have a beautiful Shabbat. Thank you again. See you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom.